Back again. You're still watching us here on Nile Cruise, and we are at Imhotep's Museum in Saqqara. And the Serapeum of Saqqara is without doubt one of the most enigmatic ancient sites, not only in Egypt but in the entire world. It's one of the several antiquity sites Egypt has renovated and reopened to boost tourism around the world. The Serapeum is also a vast underground necropolis south of Cairo that is dedicated to the bulls of Apis, which I have no idea what this is, but we're going to find out very soon. Now, the site consists of tunnels winding for 3/4 of miles beneath the sand just north of the top pyramid of Zoser. So this is definitely something very interesting for us to find out today and to know exactly what these Serapeums are. And to shed further light on that, we are delighted to have joining us Mr. Mahmoud Shaaban. He's the North Ara Chief Inspector. Thank you very much for joining us on Nile Cruise.
Thank you very much, sir. Now, the Serapeum, whose origin dates back to around 1400 BC, was discovered in 1851 by French Egyptologist Auguste Mariette, founder of the first department of Egyptian antiquities. Talk to us, please, Mr. Shaaban, about this Serapeum, when it was founded, who built it, and so on.
Serapeum is one of the most important archaeological sites in Saqqara, and it's very unique because of its nature. But before we talk about Serapeum, we have to talk about worshipping the different kind of deities, animals and birds, and catacombs were built for these animals and birds here in Saqqara. The ancient Egyptians choose this kind of animals because of different reasons. Maybe they were afraid of kind of them, maybe because of epithets. This animals is famous by these epithets. Like, we can say some examples for this. So the Egyptians choose bulls because of its strength, lions, courage, ibis for wisdom and science. So different kind, also like crocodiles in Esna, and
cats as well. Cats as well.
Cats,
yeah.
Yes. So this were very important for the Egyptian. For that, they sacred some of this kind of animals. As a part of this sacred, so they built tombs for these animals. Most important places in Egypt here, we have the Serapeum, which is built different places, like in Alexandria and here in Saqqara, and also in Atfih, it's South Giza. Also necropolis or catacombs were built for different kind of animals, like baboons, like ibis, and like the cow mother called the Isium. It's like Serapeum, it's the Isium. So these tombs were built actually to entomb this kind of animals. But the most important of them was the Serapeum of Saqqara. The Serapeum of Saqqara actually started the burial in this place during the time of Amenhotep III, from the 18th dynasty. So the tomb at this time, it was built as a separate, not like what we see now. It was built as a chapel above the ground, and a burial chamber were cut underneath. And this continued till the time of Ramses II. From the time of Ramses II, we can find the name of Kha'emwaset. Kha'emwaset was the son of Ramses II, who was the high priest of Betah, of Memphis. So we have a big relation between Betah of Memphis and the sacred bull, which was entombed inside the Serapeum, the bull itself, because this bull was a kind of the incarnation of Betah himself. So there were different conditions to identify this animal to be the deity Apis. The first one of them, that they choose this animal to be the firstborn for his mother, also to be in white color. Second, to have some sign in its body, like a sign of a scarab in its tongue, and also a big vulture in its back with a black color on its tail. So the high or the priests who serve in the temple of Apis in Memphis. They were looking for this descriptions of this animal everywhere in Egypt. After 14 years, after the death, or they slaughtered the chosen one at this time, after 14 years, they slaughtered and they mummified, and then they bury it in the cerebrium. So first we have conditions to choose this animal. Second, what is the cerebrium? The cerebrium is the tomb for this sacred bull, which was the incarnation or the living image of Betah of Memphis. So the cerebrium itself, like I told you, from the 18th dynasty, Ramesside period, but with the big scale started from the time of the 26th dynasty with Bismatic first, who start to cut the great gallery there, and the tombs or the vaults on the two sides were dedicated for the god Apis.
And what was found in the Saqqara tomb?
The cerebrium has 24 vaults inside, in the two sides of the main gallery. For 24 animal were buried inside. 1851, the cerebrium was discovered by Mariette, and Mariette was at this time he came at the beginning to Egypt to collect some Coptic manuscripts for the Louvre Museum. But when he came to Egypt, he engaged in the work of the Egyptology. So he started to make excavation after he knew, or someone told him about a statue in the area of the west of Saqqara. So he started to make excavation, and he discovered a sphinx. This sphinx was a part of a road of sphinxes extended from the cerebrium till the house of Apis, or the temple of mummification of Apis at Memphis. Memphis, which was attached to the big temple or the great temple of Betah. When this animal died, they mummified its body during 40 days in the temple there, and then in this way, on a procession, they brought his body to bury it inside the tomb itself.
So, I mean, as you've said earlier, animals had representations or symbolism here in Egypt. Let's talk more about the symbolism, or what the bull symbolizes in Egyptian ancient history.
In general, bulls have a symbolism of power, or even the king, one of his titles, some of the kings have a title, the mighty bull. It's one of the most important. So it shows us the power and how the king is very powerful and strong. So this is one of its epithets for this animal. But the most important for this, it was like I told you, it's the incarnation or the living image of one of the main god of the area of Memphis, Betah. So the animal was very important because of Betah was the main god of all of this area. Betah with Uzir, a kind of integration between the two gods, and to have the god Serapis, who was buried inside the tomb.
Okay. Now, why was or has been the Serapeum of Saqqara a continuous source of mystery, for years and years, and speculation? Let me, ask you not only why, but can you comment on that and some of the great myths or that were told about the Serapeum?
In general, archaeology is a field of mystery, So it's very important to know that when we work in excavation or work in some field like this one, we are exciting to know what we have. Maybe we can imagine a lot of things, but in the actual work we find something maybe it's like what we expect, sometimes not. So even in general, Egyptology or archaeology have a lot of imagination, mystery, and this has happened even till now by the Egyptian when they heard about anything, so their imagination is working to what is there, yeah.
I want to ask you something about, and I don't know if it's a myth or not, but it was something that was also very dazzling. The fact that when they discovered the tomb, that it weighed, or the cover of the tomb had weighed more than 70 tons, if I'm correct. And how was that lifted, and how were the artifacts looted? So there's a lot of questions raising around this phenomenon. Maybe can you talk to us more about what do you suggest took place?
So we talk about an important god and an important deity, Serapis, the symbol of Betah. A big ceremonies happened at this time, sponsored by the king himself. So the king, when they wanted to build one or to make a sarcophagus for one of them, so they had a kind of permission from the king to cut it from the royal quarries, supposed to be in good, very good condition, because it's a royal thing. So they cut granite or basalt, which is very hard stone, very far away from here, more than 900 kilometers. So when they start to cut it from its quarries, so they took it through the Nile to bring it to maybe to the lake here of Abu Sir, which is very close to the Serapeum. And then by kind of wooden rules and things like this, they took it through the desert, through the sand, to the beginning of the entrance. And then they filled the place with sand to transport it from a higher level to a lower level by removing the sand under. Then they start to pull it inside on these rules to enter to the vault and to prepare it.
All right. Now, there is this theory that suggests that this site, the Serapeum, was used for the burial of, again, the bulls, though there are many elements that do not add up with this theory. What do you think?
Actually, it's very clear because of the evidence which we found, and since from the time of Marriott Basha, and then also from the ex-minister of Antiquities, Dr. Muhammad Ibrahim, that everything is related to Apis, to the Serapeum itself, to be as a sacred tomb for Apis himself.
Okay.
Mm-hmm. I want to also ask you about the evaluation of the types of gods and worship practices that were highlighted in the Serapeum's descriptions. You know, how much history does it contain? Because this is a very precious art antiquity site. So particularly the Serapeums here, tell us more about the every detail that is missing out and that a lot of people are not aware of, especially when tourists come. I think that before they visit, they have this impression, and once they leave, there's another impression. So there's so much details that maybe is not put out in the light, if I may say, or not being shared by media, not being marketed to them before they come.
Yes, there is a lot of stories about the Serapeum, even since from the time of Cambyses, from the 26th, the Persian king. So we have two stories about Cambyses. The first one that when he was at Memphis, that one day he found the Egyptians are celebrating by the pool. So against the Egyptian, this story said that it was against the Egyptian for that he slaughtered this pool and they cook its meat. But we have we can say, the royal statement that Cambyses himself has inscription inside the Serapeum, and one of the sarcophagus is inscribed by his name. So this means that he respects all the Egyptian deities here, especially the Betah of Memphis, because he was settled or was stayed in Memphis. A lot of information, because not a lot of people, so they knew the main ideas or the general lines about the Serapeum, but a lot of details still have inside. Because the Serapeum itself, or North Saqqara in general, the area of the Serapeum and the catacombs and round, was the most important place at the last 4 centuries BC. It was the main area of Saqqara. Everything was happened here. The catacombs, dedication from people for gods, building tombs, sacrifices. Everything happened in this area in general at the last 4th century BC. So a lot of stories, maybe in the future we have a lot to discover. Even we have still discoveries here in Saqqara showing us new things. Even like I told you, they sacred different kind of animals. But in the last excavation of general director or general secretary of the Egyptian Antiquities Council, they discovered beetles, mummified scarabs, snakes or cobras. So this is very important to know. Even here in Saqqara, we have the most important places at this period, of the late period. We have the Anubian and the Bubastion, where the mission is working, where they discovered thousands of mummies of cats, and also we have here all discoveries in Saqqara, thousands or hundreds of thousands of falcons, mummified falcons, also jackals and the cow mother of Abyss. All of this is still, and the area around is still needs a lot of excavation. So we can't reveal all the secrets just once. We need time. You know.
So there's secrets. Now we're more curious to know
Yeah,
what are
that's
those
the beauty
secrets.
of it. Yeah, that's the beauty of it, really. So we know that the Serapeum sarcophagi was made out of granite and not limestone, which is a much easier material to work with. Can you tell us why?
Yes, limestone is a common material here in Saqqara because we have two kinds of limestone used in Saqqara. The local one, which is not the same quality of a finer one, which brought from Torah, from the other bank of the Nile. But because I told you, because of the importance of this deity, Abyss, and also this is a kind of a royal work like we talked before, so the king gave the order to cut the most fine stones to make the sarcophagus. So it's a very important god for a very important, or incarnation for very important god, Betah of Memphis. So everything made by the king, sponsored also by the king, so supposed to be of the finest of everything.
Now, I also want to ask you something different. We still have 10 minutes. Now, many who have visited the Serapeum since it was open have noticed that there's no soot that is present in ceilings and walls. And, of course, how would that explain the fact that it was very completely dark? And how was it even completed underground in this complete dark?
Still have soot on the walls, but it's not very clear to see. Because this is the way to enlight inside using oil.
Unless that's a secret that you don't want to reveal. It looks like it, but we still want to know, though.
Still, have some remains because they used oil lamps to enlight inside. So how they did it. So this is because soot mainly find in some areas, or find in Saqqara in very dark places, and in a very thick layer, because some of the Roman, during the Roman persecution for the Copts or for the Christians, they came and they escaped to the desert here in Saqqara. They found some tombs and they were settled. They used it for daily life. So, but this doesn't happen for, or didn't happen for the Serapeum, because the first discovering of the Serapeum, it was 1851 by Mariette. And how we know it was not used for this? Because we found a lot of artifacts, a lot of steel inside, still on the wall. So nobody entered for a very, very long time.
Okay. Now, sir, let's take a wider scope, and we want to know from you, in your view, what is the most interesting, or what are the most interesting stories about the Zoser pyramid, the Saqqara area in general?
Actually, Saqqara is a very important place. I was involved in the work of the State Pyramid Conservation Project for about 4 years. Started with Dr. Zah Hawass and the team there. So the State Pyramid is a very important place. When we talk about it, we need hours and hours to talk. The State Pyramid, you know, it's the main field in Saqqara, the most important, because from everything started from the State Pyramid. A kind of revolution happened in the field of construction and architecture by, by moving from the mud bricks and material, organic material used at the building, to have it in stone. Like around us, you can see here in the museum, the columns, which looks like a bundle of papyrus. So nobody teaches the Egyptian. The Egyptians teaches themselves, by experience, doing and failing, succeeded. Yeah. So he taught himself. But so we'll find even when they built the colonnade there, he didn't build the colonnade as a freestanding columns. We can find he supported. Still at the beginning, he supported with a short wall to ensure it will be stable. So, but by time we can find they very careful, or they were we can say they were clever to make columns with its crowns, freestanding column with different shapes. So everything started from the State Pyramid in the field of architecture.
So speaking of that, Egyptians taught themselves for very long years and decades. When it comes to archaeology, they would depend on French and German archaeologists to help in discoveries, even here in this museum as well itself. It was a French archaeologist who worked for years. But today we see more young Egyptians, young archaeologists are helping in the excavations process or even in the discoveries. So what does this tell you about the new generation and their interest and potentials in the field of archaeology?
You know, at the beginning, this is our heritage. So we have to keep, to respect, and to conserve it for a long time for our different generation later. So at the beginning, this field started by the French archaeologists and the travelers and they came at this time to take what they like, and they took it mainly to Europe, England, and in Germany, Belgium, and France. But when they start, after they solve, or Champollion succeeded to solve this, the hieroglyphic inscription, so we can say that the Egyptology started. And from this point, we start to know the hieroglyphics, we start to know the inscriptions, what does it mean, a lot of information about the ancient Egyptian from reliefs. We can explain it, we can know what it means. By the time, till Mariette became the head of the Egyptian antiquities and was called Ma'mur. Khidiwi Said Basha, he was the Ma'mur of Antica. So after this time, we can find Egyptians start to involve in this work because they need the Egyptian to keep the monuments, to store it. So the Egyptians start to have experience by time, generation after generation, till about the beginning of the 50s, from the last century. We find the Egyptian Ahmed Kamal Basha start to have a big name in the field. So Egyptian also start to involve in the work time by time, or step by step. So at the last 20 years, we have a very important part happened, that they involve young Egyptians in the work of the field, especially in the excavation, how to make excavation, conservation, everything related to the site from the beginning to its end. Before this time, we were have the foreign missions which made all of this work. But by this time, Egypt start to make trainers or trainee for in this field. Even we have in the SCA, we have an administration for training, for conservation, and for archaeological work, survey, everything like this. So now we have a lot, even now we have missions here still working here with headed by young Egyptian archaeologists. We have many examples here in Saqqara still working here. And also we have many generation also they continue to learn and to have new techniques and new technology using in the field.
Wonderful to know.
And I would like to ask you also again about the challenges that are being faced today from your perspective. I mean, there is global challenges such as the pandemic, for instance. How has that slowed down processes of discoveries or work or kept them the same? What are your perspectives?
So pandemics and some temporary circumstances, we have to deal with it. We can't stop the work. We have to deal with the circumstances around us. So, like we have, the coronavirus, we didn't stop the work, but we have some regulation to continue the work and keeping the health of everyone. So.
Thank you very much, Mr. Mahmoud Shaaban, North Saqqara Chief Inspector. Thank you for joining us here.
Thank you very
Nile
much. It's
Cruise.
been a great pleasure, sir. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
And we're still here at Imhotep Museum in Saqqara. And to know more about the different chambers that holds in this museum, we'll be back right after this report.
Imhotep, the one who comes in peace, was an Egyptian chancellor to the pharaoh Zoser, probable architect of the Zoser step pyramid, and high priest of the sun god Ra at Heliopolis. Very little is known of Imhotep as a historical figure, but in the 3,000 years following his death, he was gradually gold-field and defeat. Traditions from long over Imhotep's death treated him as a great author of wisdom, text, and especially as a physician. No text from his lifetime mentions these capacities, and no text mentions his name in the first 1,200 years following his death. Apart from the three short contemporary inscriptions that establish him as chancellor to the pharaoh, the first text to reference Imhotep dates to the time of Amenhotep III. It is addressed to the owner of the tomb. Imhotep's historicity is confirmed by two contemporary inscriptions made during his lifetime on the base or pedestal of one of Zoser's statues, and also by graffiti on the enclosure wall surrounding the unfinished step pyramid. The latter inscription suggests that Imhotep outlived Zoser by a few years and went on to serve in the construction of the king's pyramid, which was abandoned due to this rule's brief reign. Imhotep was one of the chief officials of the pharaoh Zoser. Egyptologists ascribe him to the design of the pyramid of Zoser, a step pyramid at Saqqara in Egypt, in 2630 and 2611 BC. He may also have been responsible for the first known use of the stone columns to support a building. Despite these latter assassinations, the pharaonic Egyptians themselves never credited Imhotep as the designer of this step pyramid, nor with the invention of stone architecture. He was referred in the region of Thebes as brother of Amenhotep, son of Habu, another defeat architect in the temples dedicated to Thoth. Imhotep was also linked to Asclepius by the Greeks as an instigator of the Egyptian culture. Imhotep's idolized image lasted well in the Roman period. In the Ptolemaic period, the Egyptian priest and historian Manetho credited him with inventing the method of stone-dressed building during the Zoser's reign, though he was not the first to actually build with stone. Stone walling, flooring, lentless, and jambs had appeared sporadically during the Archaic period. Though it's true that a building of the size of the step pyramid made entirely out of stone had never before been constructed, before those pharaohs were buried in mastaba tombs. This is Sahra Talawi for Nile Cruise.
That was all for this very special episode of Nile Cruise that came to you from the inside the Imhotep Museum in Saqqara. I'm Mohammed Abdulrahim, and I had the great pleasure of having the company of my dear colleague Yasmin Bakir for this episode.
Thank you very much,
dear viewers, and
Mohammed.
thank you,
It was
Yasmin.
lovely working with you,
Thank
and
you,
we
Yasmin.
definitely learned a lot about this amazing museum. And I do recommend that all our viewers, whether you're watching us outside Egypt, would really look forward to come and visit Imhotep's Museum, located in Sahara. It's very next to Zoser Pyramids, not far away. For those in Egypt, it is really something that you need to come and discover, especially as he was a very prominent architect and a lot of other titles as well. Thank you very much for watching us on Nile Cruise.